Welcome to Rough Drafts, How God Writes His Love in Our Stories, a podcast that explores the faith journeys of our friends and neighbors in Burns, Tennessee. Everyone has a story to tell, and in this podcast, we'll hear powerful and inspiring stories of how God works in the ordinary lives of people like you and me. Our stories are unfinished and perfectly imperfect. They are just rough drafts, a glimpse of what is to come because God is still at work, writing plot twists, introducing new characters, and bringing good even from the most challenging circumstances. Join us as we see what God is up to in our stories. Here's your host, Matthew Hyatt.
Today's Rough Drafts is the first of its kind. It's not just me and one weirdo, it's me and 5 weirdos. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be not just a God story of some time in the past. It's going to be a God story from about 12 days ending last week. It's some time with some of my friends who went with me to Honduras. Let's go around the table and say who's there. So,
all right, Marshall Fuson.
Tyler Quinn.
Bethany Quinn.
Hannah Gossett.
And Bryson Harding.
You guys couldn't have done that anymore. Trying to act like you were a prison detail being interviewed. This feels like The Office right now. It has that vibe. So every single one of you feel incredibly awkward about doing this, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. I made it.
Well, thank you for the kind words of encouragement. But the reason we're doing this is you learn lessons when you're doing different types of mission work that you just don't get anywhere else. And I wanted us to strike while the iron's hot and tell some of those stories. So I don't know who wants to go first, but I just kind of like to hear from you. What's actually, Tyler, start by just saying a little bit about what we did, where we went, the high level view so people know what we're talking about.
Okay. We went to Honduras. We started in Tegucigalpa, went to Santa Ana, and we built some houses, built 3 houses, we built 12 houses in all with the group that we were with. We visited autism center. We visited a special needs orphanage, another orphanage. We handed out food bags, prepared food buckets. We built a soccer court that had a couple walls, goals and stuff on the campus we were staying at so they can bring in young men. We supported the R1T1, Reach One, Teach One mission, painting, starting a fire and burning their wood scraps. Bryson and I, great day.
Purpose.
On purpose. Okay. Without a lighter. We grinded a rock.
Yes, we did.
It didn't work. We ended up using a lighter.
So you're not supposed to tell them that.
Well, the lighter they had no fuel while I lit almost their tool room on fire with WD-40. But, that was fun. And we just did a whole lot of whatever they needed around. And our group was great throughout all of it.
So, Tyler, you've done these mission trips before.
Yeah. Second time here, and then 7th or 8th, mostly medical and VBS and the other places. And this is just construction and everything else, which is really nice. It's really a good blend of any kind of mission trip you could want.
And Bethany, you've done several of these.
Yeah, so my love for mission trips really came about in 2013. I was fresh out of high school. I went with a church local, but then out of Chattanooga. It's actually where Tyler and I met and then got engaged a few years later. And that really was the trajectory, that sparked the trajectory for my life, because on that mission trip, it sparked my love of the language, of the people, and knowing that I did not want that to be my last one. And I was wondering, how can I keep doing this? And that's where, getting a Spanish major came into play, and then being a teacher where I could do good here, but then also have the summers available to do as many as needed, right? So if I think 2019, I went to Panama twice. So I went once with Tyler's home church and then once with my church at the time. And so that opportunity wouldn't have been available had I been in a normal 9-to-5 job. And so that mission trip sparked my love of Spanish and helping, and really where I am today, because without it, Tyler and I would not be together. We would not have Titus, and I probably wouldn't be a Spanish teacher. So to say that mission is a passion of mine is understated, probably.
So what you're saying is be careful with this mission stuff. You never know what it's going to do to you.
Yes. It literally changed my life, for the good. And that's one reason why I'm so passionate about it, because I want people to come. I want, Bryson and Taylor and my siblings to go and do these things, because I think that you never know where it's going to lead you when you open your heart up to God. And this is just one of those things that it's scary. You don't know what it's going to be like. You hear all of the horror stories of Central America and the things that come out of the news, and you have to genuinely let go and let God, and that's hard.
So you've been on 23,000 of these things between the two of you. This is number for you, Hannah.
This is our second trip, both to Honduras.
Okay, you and Bryson both made both of those trips.
Yes.
And Marshall?
First.
So, man, we got kind of a gamut here,
How many for you? Is out of country?
This was my third out of country and a bunch of DRT or Appalachia in the States. So got a hot mess of a mix of different things we've done. What's your takeaway? What'd you learn? Where do you want to go with this? This is your conversation.
I can start. I prepped a little bit with Bethany in the car over here, talking about things that I saw. I was thinking about two specific people or where I kind of saw God, and just because I've been on a lot of these. I don't want to say I'm desensitized to what is down there, but I've seen that environment before. And really seeing people in that environment that come from here, haven't been on a mission trip before, people in our group, how they act is really interesting to me, and really how are you going to behave? Because it changes you big time. I know I was a different person on the first mission trip I went on, not for the best. And now over the years, it's I've gotten in a place where I just feel really comfortable down there, and I really know what I'm doing. But watching other people. There's this kid, I'm going to say names, Jet, who we built a house with. And then after the day was over, I think it was either our second or third in a row, I was just wandering around aimlessly around the campus because I was just don't want to take a shower, but I really want to take a shower, but it's full because everyone was going to take a shower. And I just saw him by himself with two of the Honduran workers building the wall for the soccer court. After he had just built a house, probably the second day in a row, and he's down there helping them. So I looked at him nope, turn around. I am not going to help because I am tired. And then I got 3 steps into that, and I said, no, I'm going to go help. And just seeing his willingness, and he was down there a few minutes before me, because when I got down there, they were quitting at 4 and it was 3:57. So we played soccer instead of me helping. But he was down there helping before me after they built the house, and just seeing that commitment, and he didn't know I was paying attention or anything. He was just doing it because he wanted to help.
So Marshall, this was your first trip.
Yeah.
What caught your attention? What you notice?
It transformed. I said that in church this morning, but it's a transformative experience. It's a place where you don't have the safety net of all that America is. You don't have the protection here. You don't have the safety here. You don't have your resources here. You have God, and you have about 12 other people that and you have to trust. Not that we don't trust God in our everyday life, but I feel like as Americans in general, there's not a point where we are struggling so bad that, or at least most of us, that we have to 100% rely on God. He tells us that He will never leave us, but do we ever have to reach out and grab that? So, everybody, when I left, everybody says, oh, all the people at my work were oh, don't get shot and don't get kidnapped and take a knife with you and all, so you're getting all this stuff. You get all this anxiety getting there. I didn't even sleep good the first night. It was all this anxiety. But almost the second that I got there and I was all guarded, it's almost like this, it's hard to explain, but it's like a peaceful feeling came over you. I never felt in danger. I never felt afraid. I never felt any of that. And you feel like this, I don't know, it's a weird feeling, but you feel God. I guess that's what it is. You feel at ease because God's got you, even in some really bad situations we were in. Well, not really bad. Let me back up. Not really bad. halfway bad. We got lost in the city, and somebody's bleeding from their head. I'm really paraphrasing here. We were stuck across from a bar, and all those things. Even at that moment, I felt at peace, and more at peace than places I've been here in America. So it was really neat to feel God's, what's the right word?
Presence.
Yes, there you go.
I do feel like that's been similar to our experiences. Like we've gotten to some sketchy stuff with the revolts in Nicaragua, but I not really, for once, I thought that was kind of cool, which maybe not be the right thing to say, but I felt like safe. I don't know. I mean,
I think it's a paradigm shift that you have to go in, and even being, out of the country doing this every year, like you still, those voices of those people telling you, oh, don't get shot. It's dangerous. It's, while you say, oh, I don't believe that, there's just something about it sometimes that makes you nervous. We have an 18-month-old, and leaving him was very difficult, and knowing that this is a different trip, because last time we went out of the country before COVID, we didn't have a kid. And so now I'm responsible for somebody that's not here. And so it really was stressful in that situation. And I had this mentality that everybody was out to get something. And, if we did something, or, if something happened, it's just, that's what they do. And I think there was a paradigm shift after like day 1 or 2, where Tim was giving the police officers, like we were giving out food at those, in one of the neighborhoods. And he was giving out food to the police officers because the police officers had stopped us and were asking us questions. And I remember thinking, oh, they're just bribing us. Like they're just corrupt government. And, that's not necessarily the case. And so he gets back on and they're talking about it. And he says, oh, no, it wasn't really a bribe. I mean, it helps to have the law enforcement on your side, but they have family too, just like the people that we're about to see. And so he didn't do it because he was bribing them, or they would have told us no. Like he was just doing it. And I think for me, realizing that, you're just doing it out of the goodness of your heart, not because you feel like you have to, and knowing that they're not all bad. Like I don't know why I got that in my mind, but that paradigm shift was very important.
I think one of the coolest things going to Honduras is it doesn't stop at the law enforcement. Multiple times, even last year, Tim and Cisco have told us that this mountain we're going up to hand out food bags, to build houses, it's ran by MS-13, like a terrifying gang. And they say to you, they're not going to mess with you because you're building a house for their grandparents, for their sister, for their brother. I mean, they're not going to mess with you because they know you're here to help them, which is really cool.
And that's something about Tim and Torch in and of itself, because Torch was going to have to do a lot to win over my approval. Because again, with doing this with a church out of Chattanooga, I mean, I was loyal, and I'm still loyal to them, but I was very like, this isn't going to be as good, there's no way that anybody could beat this church. But I was so pleasantly surprised at Tim and how, if he saw a need that arose, we would go do it. So we did a Gatorade run, and that just to anybody, not to anybody, not to just members of the church, not telling them, hey, come visit so-and-so church. It was just hey, you look hot, you look thirsty, here's some Gatorade. And that in and of itself, I think, was really, eye-opening, because again, I had this mentality that they all just want stuff, and they want the free stuff, and they want this and that. And Tim didn't let that bother him. Like Torch, if somebody was waiting to build a house, there was one lady who had the application, and she was there at like 8 a.m. in our house build asking for Dalton, being like, I have the application, I have the papers, please, and I went and told Dalton, and he was like, I can't help her right now, but if she'll wait, I will talk to her after. And sure enough, after this long build day, she is still waiting, and she asked them to come see the property, and he goes up there with the interns to the property. Like after working all day in the sun with 3 different groups, like they are truly there to make a difference, and we're there to help kind of plant those seeds.
So Hannah, what's the story of how you got suckered into this world? Is this Bethany's fault? What's the story?
No, honestly, this trip kind of fell into our lap last year, and it was for me, it was very unexpected. I'd always wanted to get into like mission trip work, but I didn't really know where to start or where to go to do that. And then we're just sitting at Martha's one day talking, and Tyler's like, hey, we're going on a mission trip to Honduras with my old church. Do y'all want to go? And we're like, I mean, what week is it? When is it going to be? You know, all the questions that you ask when something new comes up. And sure enough, like date by date, it worked out. It was right after school. It was right after tennis ended. Like there were zero conflicts when so much of it could have conflicted with each other. But God just literally laid it all out perfectly and was like, you're going to make this work. Like this is going to be something that changes your life. And it was. And now it's something that we plan for every year because we know it's something that we'll go back and do.
So let me ask a follow-up question, because you said something that almost everybody has said. This is something that changes your life.
Mm-hmm.
In what way does it change your life?
It just, for me, it changed my mindset, which of course changed my heart. But I very much went into it like everybody does. Like, I cannot wait to make a difference in everybody. Like, I can't wait to change their lives and do these big things there. And I can't wait to see how they change when I leave. And after, you know, like day 3 of my first mission trip, I'm in tears because we're leaving an orphanage. And we just heard a story about a mother that had to pick 2 of her 4 children to leave because she couldn't feed everybody. But I didn't leave there thinking, wow, we just helped those kids so much. I'm leaving thinking, wow, I can't believe they have so much joy with so little. And I have everything back home and can't find the joy in a bad day. Which was just very like, the guilt was really hard last year when we came back. Just trying to like readapt into such a privileged society. And I use that word a lot now. We are very privileged here, and I will say it, and I'm very privileged. That's just how it is. But I think we take that for granted sometimes. And this trip, both trips have really just made me like take a step back and appreciate everything that I have.
Those are some good lessons.
They live so simple, and they are so resourceful with the little bit that they have. Is crazy impressive. And it is, like you said, it blew me away how thankful they were. I ended up like rationing off my lunch because it blew me away just how impactful giving them a Cliff Bar. And they would like split it up in like 8s for their whole family. So I'm like, yeah. And like, just, I ended up figuring out the smallest amount I could eat for lunch so that I could hand it out to people because it was that impactful. Just like a cracker, and they were just like, this is the best thing ever. Like, just blew me away at how thankful they were for what we would just, you know, not even think anything about.
And even more on that, I never had a kid come up to me and ask me for anything. They would stand there and they may glance over at me. Like at the church, I was handing out Airheads to every kid that I could find, but I didn't have a single one come up and ask or take one. They would wait for me to offer it, and then they would take one. And they would walk away. And I'd be like, well, you can have more. They would take one more. And so I had to give them a number that they could take because they wouldn't take more than what they needed so that their neighbor could also get some too, which was another lesson that I kind of took back with me when we got here was we're so quick to take as much as we can without thinking about the next person that has to come through, where every single person that I've ever met in Honduras takes exactly what they need, the bare minimum that they can get by with, so that the next person has enough as well.
So the orphanage we visited, a couple of you looked in the pantry when we delivered supplies. And in the kitchen for this orphanage were 2 containers, one for rice and one for beans. And in the kitchen, they had 4 cups of rice and 6 cups of beans?
For what, 25 people?
And that was what they had. So, you know, we came in one day and we bought from the Honduran version of Costco, rotisserie chickens, and we split them in legs and thighs and, you know, and all that sort of stuff. We did that in the States. We would have people saying, well, I want the white meat. No, I want the dark meat. No, that piece is too big. That piece is too small. I want a blue airhead. I want a green airhead. Ooh, the white airheads are gross. It was just, thank you. And you use that word, Hannah, privilege. I like the word spoiled. That might be a little bit too negative, but I think for me personally, I am spoiled. And I don't like to say I'm blessed. I mean, I believe that every good and perfect gift comes from above. I am blessed, but I'm spoiled more than I am blessed.
When you see like an image, it's kind of burned in my mind, but at a house bill we were building, I looked over across the way and there was a girl slightly older than my daughter, probably 8, and she was washing her entire family's laundry on a rock out of a rain barrel with a bowl. And those kind of things, you bring those things back with you, and just like throwing your laundry in the washing machine, you're like, thank you, God. I just, it's just crazy. And, I will say this for everybody. I've traveled a lot of places internationally and some like Dominican Republic and some really poor areas, and I've seen those things. But you see those from a bus till you go into your fancy resort, right? So if you think you've been exposed to it and you haven't done a mission trip, I guess the thing about it is that when you do a mission trip, you're in it and you're not just looking at it from afar. And so even though I had seen some poverty from afar, helping and being in that's what changes you. You might slightly see it just traveling a place, but I highly, highly, highly encourage anybody that hasn't done it before, absolutely do it.
It's funny. I wish we could take everybody in the church, just because that dose of perspective. I took a picture on the flight on the way back home, because I looked out the window of the airplane, and from the runway I could see kids washing clothes on a stone washing thing. Like, you don't see that at B&A. I can't get my kids to use the washing machine where all they have to do is put on a scoop of detergent, hit start, And here's a kid that's our kid's age, it kind of, again, privileged. Mm-hmm.
I think that's one reason why they like getting the stories of the houses we're building. So I asked Dalton, the construction coordinator person over all of the construction of the houses, I kind of asked him, how do y'all decide who gets a house? Because that was something that I didn't really understand. How do you find the people? Where do they come from? And he gave me a little bit of information. And he's like, they're truly vetted. He said, not only do we ask their stories and things, but then we go into the neighborhood and we ask their neighbors, how are they? What are they like? And so the people that we're building houses for are people who truly, through the community itself, have said, hey, we need help. And so getting to talk with them, it was really interesting because you didn't need a lot. Like you said, they just needed a little extra help. And so for several of them, for 2 of the houses that we built, they were paying 1,000 limps a month, which was $40. When, a quarter of the population of Honduras lives on $2 a day or less than, and about half lives on $6 a day, that adds up. And so it was 1,000 limps a month. And this house that we were building wasn't going to cost them anything, but it allowed them to get that leg up that they needed. So that $40 now could be spent, on expanding one of the houses. The very first house we did, it was a man, his wife, their 2 kids, but then she was pregnant with another one. And they were living in a house that wasn't much bigger than what we made them. But it had a small kitchen and a small bedroom and then a living room. And we gave them a 16 by 16 foot house. And I was so confused. I was like, why? You're going to something smaller. And he was like, well, it's 1,000 limps a month, which can now be used to me expanding out and building more and doing more there, getting ready for my 3rd kid to be there. Another one was a single mom who was living with her grandfather, and several aunts and uncles also lived there, and she had 2 kids. She was 27. I think her oldest was 12 or 13, fixing to be 13. And she was like, right now I only have to pay for the lights, but like that's expensive. Electricity is very expensive there. And so she was talking about how much it would cost to run the lights to the house, and it was going to be like 3,500 limps or something, so about $120. And she was just excited to have something that was hers. Like, that's what she said. She was like, this is something that I have wanted that it's now mine and I own it and, you know, I'm going to take care of it. And then another house, similar concept, where it was an older man and he was paying 1,000 limps a month. And he was so thankful. Like, they didn't think that it was going to happen. They were like, we have been doing this for 5 years, been trying to get a house for 5 years, and we haven't been able to, but we sell stuff to make tortillas on the side of the, like, outside of our house, which isn't in the city. And now they're on a busier road. And so that leg up, that one day of house building allowed them to further and continue on with the work that they're doing to help them. And like I said, it was just that one little leg up that I think they were wanting, you know.
And I was going to say the Kentucky, there was a group from Kentucky with us, and they had probably one of the saddest stories. The house they built, it was for a mom and 2 children who were living under a tarp. And we're talking about a 16 by 16 foot, like what we would consider a garden shed, with a tin roof. And these people were so thankful for this, they were literally crying when we gave it to them. Like, if that's some perspective.
They didn't have to be members of the church either. They were just like good citizens of the community, just helping anyone out, which I really like too.
What's the scripture say? It says, let's do good to all as we have opportunity, especially those of the household of faith, but let's do good to all.
Yeah.
And that was pretty cool.
And maybe they will become a member of the church after this.
Yeah, those houses stand a long time as a marker too.
I think Frank said that he'd seen houses from like 30 years ago that were still standing. And so that just goes to show, you know, how much
one that we worked on.
Definitely not.
Because some of us are a little building challenged. And I tried to kill Hannah, you know. It's all good. You should have seen Caleb Scott on top of the roof. And, you know, the only power tool we had was a chainsaw. So the chainsaw was our chop saw, our miter saw, our trim work, it was, you know, if the only thing you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So
Bethany won't let me use a chainsaw in the United States, but in Honduras, I can do whatever I want.
That didn't make a lot of sense. The trauma centers are a lot better here. You should really swap that up. Let them use it where you get the benefit. Bryson, so tell me a little bit about just your takeaways, how you saw God, what you've learned, how this affects you.
Oh, goodness. One thing from being, from coming 2 years, last year we had 20 people altogether. Once the second group arrived, three or so days after us. When I figured out that there was going to be 80 to 90 people there, I became so selfish that, my experience in Honduras is not going to be as good as it was and as personal as it was the year before when there was only 20 of us. But then as I reflected on the way back and, you know, throughout the week, last year we built 3 houses with us 20. This year we built 12 houses for 12 families to, you know, have the leg up like you're saying. I mean, it made me so happy that 80 to 90 people would take the vacation days and build a house for 12 families. And that's where I saw God, that crazy shift in my brain that just really showed me how amazing the work that all these people are doing is.
You know, it's funny. It's easy to still be selfish while you're on a mission trip because there's a line for the food and the bus was uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it would have made my heart happy if there were about 30 fewer people. That's just true wherever I am, you know, but even if there's only 25 in the room, it's still true. But one of the things that I enjoyed about this group and this experience was how often it was able to kind of offer the gentle. Nobody came to you and said, Bryson, what's your attitude?
Absolutely.
But the environment kind of, it gave me those checks too when I was thinking and feeling the same things. I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, when we're all packed 35 people in a 15-passenger bus, that'll, just little things like that'll make you appreciate my real comfortable car that I have every day. You know, we were just lucky to have a bus to get us where we're going. And we got real comfortable with people we hardly knew in that, you know.
You were worried about cartels going. You should have been worried about traffic accidents. That was the most danger we had the entire trip.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure at one point Hannah was in my lap and Matthew was dying of allergies holding flowers.
Yeah. Someone bought several bouquets of flowers at the market to give to the cooks.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the cooks for a second. For one, the food was obscenely good everywhere we went. But one thing that I appreciated a lot about Torch was at every opportunity they hired locals and allowed us to bless them. So at the center, we had 3 ladies who ran the kitchen who were amazing. We had bus drivers who were with us the whole time, who were our safety net, because we always had them and they could always help us. If we had a problem, they were there. There was a lady, sweet lady, who did the laundry, and she charged $5 a load, and some portion of that went to electricity because, like you said, it's so expensive there. But that's her job. Then the Each One, Reach One program.
Reach one, teach one.
Shoot.
Good try.
I keep getting it wrong.
Good try. Snack Shack.
I'm making up names for these things. Yeah. We'll talk about the program and then talk about how that can Snack Shack.
The Reach One, Teach One Dalton started, I guess, 4 years back, right?
Bryson's wearing the t-shirt. We should make him do that.
Yeah, we should.
Is that the invitation? Yeah, so Dalton, Tim's son, started a program for Honduran boys. I don't know what the specific age range is, but it's for boys to learn how to provide for their family now or their family later. So he has programs like carpentry and plumbing, yeah, all the trades, and of course there's like gardening and farming and everything like that. But how it connects to the Snack Shack is I don't know. I guess just whoever's been there long.
I think it's 3 of the graduates because it's Christian, Kevin, and Hoel, and they were in the program when we were there last year, and they were still there, thankfully, this year because they're all really cool. And they run the Snack Shack, and whatever they make at past profit, they get to keep. Like
he said, basically, he treated it like a micro loan.
Yeah.
He gave them the money they needed to buy their initial supplies. They developed the menu. They take care of the purchasing, the billing, the whole nine. They've repaid all their debts, and now these guys have started a successful business.
Yeah, and it's really good food too. So.
Yeah, that was the highlight of the night. After supper and after Evening Depot, they had this little Snack Shack where you could buy smoothies and all the fruit there in Honduras. Good grief,
So
that was good. Yeah,
The mangoes.
The mangoes are the best.
Yes.
That is where I felt most selfish was I wish all these people would go to bed because the line was so long every night.
What was the lady's name who volunteered in the kitchen every morning?
Probably Magali.
Magali.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love her.
She would always hand out the fruit, and it was 1 or 2, 1 or 2. So every time I saw her, she'd say 1 or 2. I said 10. You know? She was super sweet. She was super sweet.
You mentioned about, for the guys in Honduras, but we went to Mi Esperanza, which is a basically similar to the R1T1 in that they started out as microloans to women to help them kind of get their businesses off the ground, and it has transformed in the, I think, 20 years now that they've been doing it into a school of sorts. So they have people coming in and teaching them. I think I walked around and they had different like computer and English and things like that. But then they also had textile work, and you could buy some of the pottery or jewelry, things of that nature that you could buy there that they had made. And it had who made it, and you could read about their story online. And it's actually really interesting to me that the founder was a Torch person. So she came in, I think, in 1998. She came in 1998 and said, we've got to do something. And she did something and made this program. And like I said, now it's kind of grown into what we see it as today, where you can buy stuff online and you can go and see the people that you're helping. But they just put a daycare in there. And they said that one of the biggest problems they have is daycare issues. So it's hard for women to get to work because they don't have childcare. And so they made it free to all of their students and all of their employees. They have a daycare there now. And so I just thought that was really interesting that they're constantly figuring out ways to help the Honduran people. You know, that saying of you give a guy a fish, he'll eat for a day, but you teach him how to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. And that is truly what they're doing here by building the houses, R1, T1, Mi Esperanza, they are truly teaching them how to fish to help support their families.
It's really cool. And the lady who runs it, her talk about how generally women bear the brunt of poverty, and the best way to improve the world is to improve the plight of women, I thought was something we needed to hear. Especially I'm looking at me, Tyler, and Marshall, and Bryson. We're guys. Hannah, you talked about privilege. There's an extra level of privilege that we have enjoyed, and that's not always something that's politically correct in our conservative circles to talk about. It's just the truth.
Definitely.
There were so many things about that, doing something like this is going to mess with your head. It's going to mess with your heart. It's going to mess with your politics. It's funny, you go to Honduras and you see what a fully corrupt government looks like in a lot of ways. You see what a place looks like with no zoning laws.
No OSHA.
No environmental regulations. Every night you went to bed to the smell of burning plastic because nobody took the trash anywhere. You just burned it. We called it our cancer incense because, and I'm not criticizing the people. Not at all. That's just, we pay $27 a month. Somebody picks up our trash. They make it go away. We don't have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you make $2 a day, that ain't happening.
I did say that to Bryson. I think, can't you just smell the cancer when we were burning all that treated lumber that my dad told me never to burn? This is not okay to do, but
Well, even that little bit. Okay, so I loved how optimized they had gotten the house build process. You build a stinking house. By the time you're done, you have basically a backpack's worth of scraps. I mean, there was almost no scrap lumber, but every family wanted every piece of scrap wood, and this is pressure treated lumber. And they wanted it so that they'd have it to cook over.
Yeah.
Like, hello, you get mad at me when I throw a napkin in a campfire when you're having s'mores.
There was one woman that asked us to save every piece of lumber so that she could make a table out of it for her family to eat around, because that was very important to her, to have something to pray over and to eat around with her family.
And also a really sad story. Talking about construction scrap made me think of it, but one of the home builds, it wasn't the one I did, but one of the groups, they thought they were throwing construction scrap into a trash pile, and it turned out that was all the woman's belongings. That's all she had, and it looked like trash to us. And she started pulling the construction debris away from her belongings to take it in the house, and it all hit them like, oh.
Yeah. Another piece that stood out to me was when we went to the Jesus statue, which we told the story this morning. It's a statue that was built after one of the hurricanes came through and almost 10,000 people died in a mudslide that just wiped off a hill. But before they told that story, I stood up there and you could see the city lights, and you notice there's these dark sections. And, in the States, if you see that view, well, that's where the parks are, right? Or somebody who has a lot of land. But the first big dark section off to our right was where 10,000 people died. And then when Tim gives the talk, he says, the dark sections are the people who are too poor even for electricity. The dark sections are where you work today. Somebody said this story a whole lot better than me this morning. But he said the dark sections were where you were the light this week. In that image of the pictures we took, that's probably my favorite picture, because you can see that these are the forgotten people in the forgotten city, in the forgotten country. And we're fortunate. We're super fortunate.
Yeah, I did the clinic day. I think I was the only one of our group that ended up going to the clinic on that Wednesday. And it was also eye-opening. I think they had shut down the school. So first of all, we went like an hour and a half away by bus. I didn't think the bus was going to make it half the time, because it was up a steep mountain, and they had shut down school for us to be able to have this. And I was working in registration, getting the people registered, and it's always such a difficult thing because they want to tell you everything that's wrong with them right then and there, and I just have to tell them, like, hey, you're going to see a doctor, but this time I was able to kind of get some of their chief complaints. And one of the questions was about parasites. I was like, what kind of question is this? And I asked Christian, because he was helping another registration person. And I said, what is it? Like, what is this for? Is this COVID? Like, I don't understand. And he was like, no, it's parasites. And I was like, okay, whatever that means. And then come to find out, that it's worms. Like they had worms and stuff. And it was something that was very prevalent within that community. And like, that's just something we don't think about. But literally I was like, oh, you're asking about like parasites, like worms and things like that. And so they gave them medicine. And so a lot of people, they didn't necessarily want to come and see the doctor. They just needed the vitamins for their kids and then the parasite medicine so that they could take it. But I mean, we were up on a hill. Like buses can't make it. Normal buses, that carry people to and from can't make it that way. So it's either they walk miles to get to the clinic to get that help, or they don't. And they live with it. And, they were fine. They acted as if this was their normal, and it was. And it just was really eye-opening because that's not the case for us. Once again, going back to that privileged and spoiled mindset, like not having to worry about that stuff.
So one Sunday we worshiped with the Los Pinos Church of Christ, and it was the Church in the Pines or something like that. And I may have the story wrong. He talked about how from that mountaintop you could see another mountaintop. And the people on this mountaintop at Los Pinos felt like the people on the other mountain needed to have a church. So they would meet, they would worship, and they would walk to the other mountain. So down and up, 6 miles, they'd go and worship, and they'd walk down and up to come back home another 6. They walked 12 to 13 miles, not just to worship, but so they could help somebody else worship. Preacher hat on for a second. If it's rainy, our attendance drops 20%.
That's what I was about to say.
And like, you hear that story and like your soul just sort of wants to scream, like, I don't even have words for it.
A little girl asked me for a Bible, and I'm like, of course we all know that not the whole world doesn't have access to a Bible, but to literally hand that to someone, this is a gift to them, and we've got it on our phone, on our Bible app, and we hardly check it or look at it or, reference it. And it's like, it's humbling for sure.
And at risk for being, I don't know, controversial, like I know that I'm sorry if this gets you bad ratings, but like in America, I just remember, being in high school and stuff, it was almost like an us versus them mentality, but it wasn't, us versus those who don't believe. It was like us versus this denomination and that denomination. And if they weren't in our denomination, then they weren't good. And then they were lost as well, just like somebody who had never seen a Bible. And I think then going down to places like Honduras, it's like, no, these people are like the definition of lost. Like they haven't seen a Bible. Those are the ones that I feel like at least I'm called to reach and to try to reach to. And that's that exact instance where she may have never seen a Bible before, but then you gave her one and she was able to use it. And
I was so mad at myself because I told Matthew, actually, I blew it. I was so excited to like be handing this person a Bible, and then like, hey, here you go. Yes, absolutely, you can have a Bible. And I'm like, why didn't I sit down and study with her? Like, I blew it. But you know what? I'll be better next time.
So, Marshall, it's a shame that was her one chance. All this fault, Nick. Oh, you'll never know. Well, I hope you can sleep at night. Marshall.
Yeah, I'm a little less good now, Matt. Thanks.
I'm sure glad that God doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure glad God seeks those who want him. And you saw a lot of that on the trip, too.
I do think that a lot of what this trip is about, though, is recognizing I can do more. Like, before this mission trip, somebody in the States may have asked you, hey, can I buy a Bible? And you've been like, yeah, sure, here it is. It never had a second thought about it. But this trip it makes you think, like, what else can I do? Like, you get excited to serve somebody. Like, it's not a job anymore. It's not like, well, I'm called to do this, so I better do it. It's like, what next? What more can I do? How much more can I give? And you want to pour your whole soul into somebody. And that's what I love about this mission work is it makes you think like, yes, I did this, but next time I'm going to do this and I'm going to follow it up with this. And then, after that, you're going to be like, well, next time I'm going to give her the Bible and then I'm going to study it with her and then I'm going to give her the name of a local church. Like you're always searching for ways to help because, you're filling their cup, but your cup is getting so full at the same time.
Bingo.
I think one of the good things mission work does for you is it helps you do mission work when you're back home. People don't get this. It is way easier to do mission work on a mission trip than it is to live like a Christian at home. So you spend 12 days doing it in Honduras. When you come back home, it's a little bit easier to actually do the stuff you were supposed to do before you left.
I'm going to brag on Bethany a little bit for a second because it hurts me a little bit, but we're going to get through it. So, so we got back from Honduras last year. And of course, like after your first mission trip, you're just on cloud nine. We came home and, you know, we're ready, but we're like, okay, now what? Like, now who do we serve? And we just get a call from Bethany one day and she's like, hey, do y'all want to go deliver ice water and snacks to people around Dixon? And, you know, in my head, I'm thinking like, I mean, yeah, I guess, but like, do they need it? Like, do they not already have it? Like, is that a need? And so we're driving around and, you know, random people that might not necessarily like need the help. We're so thankful and so appreciative. And we got into areas of Dixon that I didn't even know existed. Like,
I'm sorry, Monica and Mom.
Yeah,
taking them
quit listening for just a second. We went to this like RV park.
The old KOA.
Never knew this was there because I've never needed to know it was there. I've always gone right past that road and gone to Colton's to eat or Cracker Barrel or wherever we're going. Not Cracker Barrel. I hate Cracker Barrel, but and that's a whole nother discussion. And we get back there and there's all these people walking around in tank tops, just sweating and trying to find like some kind of shade to sit in. And I mean, you know, we're a little nervous, like we're getting our stuff and we're like, okay, just kind of stay together. And never once did I feel unsafe while we were there. We'd have people walking beside us. We'd be like, hey, do you want a water? And it was the same mentality as the people in Honduras had. They would take one bag of chips and one water and nothing else. They wouldn't ask for more. They wouldn't pretend like they were taking it back to somebody in their house. They took exactly what they needed so that their neighbor had what they needed as well. And it was just like, it was that like reaffirmation of why do we have so much and still take so much when there are those who have nothing and take so little to fill their cup. Like that one bag of chips and water, I mean, you would have thought we just gave them 2 months worth of rent on their place, but we didn't. And it was just like, okay, another like eye-opening experience.
What I love about that story is it is literally what Jesus said. You know, you give someone a cup of cold water, you'll by no means like, oh, that doesn't matter. That's not important. It does when you're the guy who needs a cup of cold water. And
well, and I think Tyler like has a good mentality of like, we have some friends that they like to talk and just think things through. And he's like, I just want to do. Like in the time that we've sat here and talked, we could have done things. And so, you know, honestly, I forgot all about that story. But it's just one of those things that like mission trips, like you said, they don't have to, you could just go do that within your community as well. And I think it is very eye-opening, you know, when you're talking about giving a Bible to somebody and now, you know, for even if it's a week from now, or maybe it is next year on the next mission trip, but like just being aware of those situations. And that wouldn't have come about if it hadn't been for the trip.
let's wrap up by doing just a couple more things. One, I'd like to just go around the table and one thing that you enjoyed, liked, learned, just kind of a quick thing. One thing that meant a lot to you on the trip, or that you'll kind of take with you. And I'll start to buy you time to think about yours because I see the dirty looks you're all giving me. And then we'll go to Marshall. That way Bryson gets to go last, and he might not kill me in my sleep when we go back. But to me, I love the camaraderie. Like you just said, at church we talk a lot. We don't often do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're doing, a lot of things just fall into place. Hey, hand me a hammer. I didn't ask what your favorite Bible translation is, or if you like clapping in church or you don't, or if what's your view on the end time. Hand me a hammer. And that's maybe my favorite thing about mission work is I feel like our religion gets down to brass tacks, what it's supposed to be about. And I don't know about you, I get tired of all of I'm trying to find any other term besides BS, but we're just going to go with BS that get draped on top of religion. All of the arguments and politics and committees and plans, and this person don't just be hearers of the word, be doers. And getting to do that is a major recharge to my soul. So that was for me. What about you, Marshall?
I really liked the chance to be involved and actually know that what you're doing good. Here in the States, I pray, God, make me more like you. Give me chances to help people. And those are few and far between. And I hope God will send me more chances now that my heart is open to that. But I love that I can go there and I can make a difference, and it's easy to make a difference. I love the chance to impact a ton of people in a small amount of time. I loved that, and I loved just being a light to kids. That was probably my favorite thing, is, just for a whole second, maybe that 9-year-old that I gave a toy to, maybe 5 years down the road, he remembers that and he decides to be a Christian, maybe, so I loved being able to help kids and brighten kids' days, because they're our future.
You introduced a kid to a Frisbee who'd never seen a Frisbee before. And the 98-cent Frisbee you gave to a kid was like if you had given me $1,000.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not going to cry, but I did it this morning. I'm not going to cry. That's why I didn't bring it up. Thanks, Matthew.
Well, hey, you broke me. I can break you with a Frisbee too.
Yeah. So, he had never even seen one. He didn't even know what it was, a Frisbee. So, yeah.
A few things that I thought were cool were seeing Bethany come on the trip that I went on. Sorry, I mean, you're so great. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you edit that out, please?
Just seeing her translate for the families, and just, I don't know, that really got to me for some reason. Translating for how grateful they were, and seeing her be able to do that, and her being so nervous through it was cool for me. And just experiencing all the relationships that we made on this trip with Landon, who didn't have anyone he went with, his preacher, and being into our group so fast, and having such a good, strong relationship with Bryson made me feel like how I was when I was a little younger, meeting friends like that, so quick. I've only met him once, and I still can, if I were to see him outside of the trip again, it'll last a lifetime. It's one trip. It's crazy. And then I was inspired by my own Devo, as I often am. Oh, wow. That no one else's throughout the week, but mine really struck me. That in For God's Path, because I was talking to somebody else, I love looking back on how God does great things with me, but I never really look for them. So I feel like this week I was just trying to look for things so much harder than I never look here. I always like to look back, but I never look forward or look what I can do. And I want to try to make that a point, bragging on myself a little bit. But just a realization I can't do, talking to other people that made me realize it. And,
the things that you learn while you're on these trips are just incredibly important.
Yeah, just talking to people that were here, always with me, but that conversation never got brought up because now we're in a different situation together. So it's cool.
Yeah, I think my mentality changed a lot. And, again, being on these trips, it had been 3 years since I'd gone on one because of COVID and then having a baby. I wasn't able to come last year. And so 3 years out, I don't know what it was. I don't know what my preconceived notions were, but I just remember feeling, I don't know the right word, not negative, maybe negative. I don't know. I felt negative in that I was and this is going to sound bad, it's not necessarily mean it, but I'm better than them situation where I'm oh, I have all of this stuff and you don't have anything, so I'm coming to help you. And that completely changed, of course. And I think this mentality of just, they don't have as much as we do, but that doesn't mean that their lives are worse, I guess would be the right way to say it. Their lives seem full and they have family and those things that really matter, they don't take for granted. Like you said, with the Frisbee or the airheads, they take each of those little blessings and they hold on to them. And for me, it's something that I need to work on, is get over getting all the money, right? Like that doesn't really mean as much. And so saying, okay, how can I do more with less, or how can I be appreciative and grateful for what I have, even if it's those small things. In my classes, I go back and forth between teaching about places like Honduras and Nicaragua and Panama, because I want these kids to see, hey, your life is great. Like what you have here, it may not seem like you have the actual AirPods or whatever, or you don't have the coolest shoes or the name brand shirt, but you have a shirt and you have these things. And riding that line of that mentality, but then also like giving them the complex of, oh, America's the best. You know, we are superior. And that's kind of where I was. Like, and even though I preach it to my kids, don't be that way, I was really riding that fine line. And this trip just kind of reiterated and took me down a peg and was like, okay, like I am blessed, I am spoiled, I am privileged, whatever word you want to use there. But that doesn't make me any better than anybody else. And so that's something that I will take. It just renews my urgency to express that to my kids in my classroom going forward.
If I was going to give this trip like a group lesson, like something that I think we all learned, it would be love doesn't have a barrier. And that's been talked about so much since we've been back from this trip. And whether like the barrier is language or culture or whatever it may be, every single person on our trip was able to communicate and receive love with 0 words. I mean, Bryson said it a million times. You're walking down the street and you have a child look up and smile at you and you know everything you need to know. Like you didn't have to speak a word. You didn't even have to touch them or communicate with them in any form. And you know, like you just see their heart through their actions. And it can be something like a smile or at the orphanage. Gosh, I think this broke Matthew and I more than we probably expected it to. But there were these little girls, especially Ruth. Ruth was, if I could have adopted her, my parents would be one more grandchild richer. She didn't know me. We walked in, we served chicken, and I sat down, and I talk Spanish at probably like a pre-K level, like, or less. I know enough to say the bare minimum. So I said what I could to her and communicated what I could. She got done with her food and put her hand down at me. And that was all I needed. It was the, come on, you're my person for today. And I mean, the love in my heart for her is just like insane. And it was just such a big lesson of like, you know, we don't know how big of an impact we're having on somebody until it's been made on them. You know, I assumed I was probably annoying them, or they were probably like, okay, who's this girl that thinks she knows Spanish trying to talk to us over here? And in no way is that what they took from that conversation. They saw somebody who wanted to learn, who wanted to know more, and they reciprocated that, you know? It was such an awesome feeling to see, like, I don't have to have it all right to be able to do right.
You know, if you haven't done it, being in a place where you don't speak the language, I think is an experience everyone should have, because it will change how you treat people.
I call it humbling. Extremely humbling.
It is frustrating, and you feel stupid a lot, or at least I did, and do.
I had a 13-day streak on Duolingo.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep it going.
Well,
It's your streak now.
I think I'm at like 270 days.
I was going to say, I think, you know, I was there for like the KFC adventures and things like that. And someone asked me, or I don't know how it came about, but I was like, I don't want to be up there translating for you, because it's good for you to struggle. Like, it is so helpful for you to see what it feels like to not know the language and try to order something and then see what you get. It is
Well, my combination was $30.
And we love Bethany. We loved doing this trip with her. But some of our favorite experiences is when we didn't have her to bail us out. Like when we had to figure out how to communicate to the lady running the poperia, and when we had kids asking us for stuff and we had to sit there and figure it out, because we weren't going to leave without knowing what they wanted, and they weren't going anywhere either. It was just, it was like at the end of it, when you finally get it, when it finally clicks, everybody is like on cloud nine. You're rejoicing and you're screaming and you're clapping like you just won a Super Bowl or something. And all you did was figure out, can I have a Coke? Will you buy me a Coke? But
Now you see why I like being a Spanish teacher.
that one moment of like, I worked for this. This was important to both of us. And we came to the conclusion together was like mind blowing.
So I walked over to that little Pizza Hut to try to buy a bottle of Pepsi because that's what they had. And, I didn't have Bethany nearby. So, like, it takes us a while. And he didn't understand for a long time that I wasn't trying to order a meal. I just wanted the one drink because, not having something cold. That, man, we take cold drinks for granted every time. And I started trying to, like I point to it, I point to somebody else's, and I'm like, how much? So I got start waving money, and eventually you can tell that he thinks I'm an idiot, and he just starts laughing. He goes, gratis, gratis. And he gave me the drink, I think, because he decided it was easier than me paying for it. So either that or I shoplifted from the Pizza Hut into Gossett. One or the other.
He's going to have wanted posters like next time we go.
I'm not allowed in the country.
We'll dress you up as a clown.
And you missed that this morning, evidently. Clowns, drug dealers dress as clowns sometimes to make them harder to identify or describe to the police, which was amazing because Frank Bradford brought his clown costume. Hey, if only. Susan, we were so close. We tried.
We tried to get him off the bus at the gas station, but he wouldn't budge.
Yeah. All right, Bryson.
Oh, gosh. I don't even remember what I was going to say. So probably it's so hard to pinpoint something after 11 days in a foreign country, but one of the coolest things for me, coming from a person that has played sports my entire life, I have never had a moment in sports that will ever compare to playing soccer with a bunch of Hondurans.
8-year-olds.
Yeah, it's equally the most humbling and most exciting experience I've ever had. I mean, you've never seen a group of kids that love to just make gringos look silly on a soccer pitch, but it's the easiest way to have some camaraderie while in a foreign country and can't speak their language, kind of like what Hannah said. But I will never play soccer in the States because it doesn't give me that type of cup feeling. But I mean, that's probably one of the most influential parts of my trip was being able to
Like minister to them.
Yeah,
Soccer.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know half the rules, and I couldn't tell when I was doing something wrong.
Soccer, you don't use your hands.
That's why you were the goalie, so you
Yeah, and they yelled at me mono a lot because I would slap the ball in my hands, and I can't do that. But yeah, it was the easiest way to become friends with someone you don't know their language, and it's just I've never had a sports experience like that.
What would the world look like if we played more? You know,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, talk about bringing down barriers instantly. You know, I didn't know anything except a key. You know, you get here. I assumed that meant pass it, but evidently it was here. I was close.
Well, I think too, like just going on to that, like, you know, at the very beginning of the week, that was one of the first things we did was we put together the wall as we started making the soccer pitch. And Dalton was like, this is going to help us be able to minister to people. Like, we'll have a league of some sorts, you know, where we'll play on Tuesdays or Thursdays, and then they'll do a Devo. And I don't know a better way to live out, you know, the church's kind of theme for this year of grow, and us planting the seeds of making the wall to help keep the soccer ball in the pitch and building the house for decades to come for that family to live in there. Like, those are planting the seeds, and we don't see the direct effects of that. And I think that's hard sometimes because we are so used to instant gratification, which is another piece of, you know, that privilege that we have, like the text message that comes immediately, the TV that turns on when we want it to, and or whatever, the hot water that comes immediately. We don't have to wait 3 minutes and then it's scalding and then fix it again. And, you know, we don't have to worry about that. And so, or water is right. And so I think, like, again, that's that aspect of we're planting the seed, and then they're watering what we've done. So they're, going to have those devos on those weeknights, and they're going to see the people from the church, those church people or the house people will see us, and they know that it was in the name of God, and it was in the name of the Church of Christ. And so they know that if they're ever looking for a place to go, they're going to be welcome in one of those churches, because he said that they always build the houses, and then, sometimes a few years later, they'll build a church there. So they're always planning on building a church within walking distance of those houses. And so that's something that, again, even though it may be decades from now or a decade or whatever, they're going to have the seed watered, and then God will give that increase.
And one thing, this may cause a little bit of disagreement, but we talked about the Jesus statue that was built for, $10 million on a hill. And she said that she wanted it there as like a seed of hope, so that when people looked up, they saw the hands and feet of Jesus. But in my opinion, truthfully, I feel like the houses and the soccer walls and the visits to the church, I feel like those are the seeds that are being planted for hope, and that will grow eventually to create more Christians and to create churches and community than that Jesus statue can ever be. Because the hands and feet of Jesus, to me, are us, the people that can go and do and make a difference. And that was just something that, we were up there, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty, this is cool, but I felt like we were making that difference on the ground with those people, as opposed to up in the air above them. Because I think, when Jesus was here, he was eye to eye with these people. He was on the ground level with them. He rode in on the donkey with them, I felt like being down there in the poverty areas was the hands and feet of Jesus, making the differences there.
I agree. Yeah, the statue is beautiful, and the story we told it this morning at church. But when that hurricane came through, the first lady said we need to do something to give people hope, and they spent $10 million to build a statue, which turned into a park, and it's beautiful and it's cool. But I'm with you. The houses, the clean drinking water. Marshall, tell the story about the water for that community.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this. So one of the communities that we went to, we were there to deliver food. The hill was so steep, we all had to climb off the bus, and the bus driver almost burned the clutch up trying to get us up the hill, and then decided, okay, we can't get up the hill with all these people. It was so steep that we all got off the bus, and then the bus made it up there. So it turns out we delivered food out, and it turns out that community had zero water, zero electricity. And so those people have to literally walk down that hill, and I don't know how far else down that hill. It could be way down there. I have no idea where they're getting the water. They literally have to walk all the way down the hill to the base of wherever and truck back up their water for the day. So us and church from Kentucky, I was talking to a guy from Kentucky. We just happened to be standing right beside each other, and he's like, we can do something about this. I'm like, yeah. So we went and talked to Tim Hines, who's the group leader. And he's like, well, I don't know. He's like, well, we got to get this. We got to get the pump. We got to get the pipe. And, this is going to cost this. And he's trying to put it all in his head together. And he's like, yeah. I was expecting this exorbitant amount to get them water up the hill. But he's talking about we won't do a well. We'll just do a pump and some pipes, and we'll get it up there. And it's going to cost $25 a month to run electricity for it, whatever. He's like, so I'm expecting this huge amount, oh gosh, well, can we do this? Can we not do this? He's like, it's probably going to be about $4,500. I'm like, what? That's it? He's like, well, I like your attitude. I'm like, man, we got 2 churches here. We can raise that in a Sunday. No big deal. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, well, I'll go get some prices. And he's like, and I'll give you receipts. I promise, we'll get prices and I'll send y'all receipts. I'm like, Tim, I'm not worried about the dang receipts, man. Let's just get them some water. But really, I'm super excited about that. We have been there. We have stood there. We know exactly where it's going to go. We don't have to worry about, are we giving money? Is it going to help? We know we can get these people water. How big of an impact we can give a whole community water for, all of us throw in $20. We got it, So, and yeah.
Talk about a game changer, a leg up. This means that mom is not spending 4 hours a day trying to do laundry. This means that kids, we couldn't drink the water because we're not used to the stuff they have, but they can drink the city water mostly.
Yeah, and he said that would even be filters in that.
So, you're changing health, you're changing education, you're changing career, you're changing fire safety. I mean, you're changing the world for $4,000.
Yeah.
Well, what was I going to do with it?
Yeah.
I think it's cool that he talks about like church contribution because Tim talked about like we went and visited the church up on the mountain, and he said, give what your heart is telling you to give, but just know when you leave here, you're going to increase their contribution by 10 times what it normally was. And we ended up getting the number back before we left, and it was exactly 10 times the amount that they normally raise. And the preacher was like in awe. He's like, this is going to change so much for us. We can do so much with this money. Like this was just huge. And to us, it was like, we gave 500 lamps, which is $20 American. And that was 10 times what the average Honduran could give at the church.
Crazy.
I think too, like at risk of being cliche, we talk about changing the world. We didn't go to all of these countries, but we changed the world for that one neighborhood. And I think if we wait to try to change the world until we can do it all at once, like you're never going to get there. And even if we did it little by little, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't keep trying. And I think, making the world change for that one village is just the first step. And, next year, finding those avenues and ways that we can contribute and donate and do whatever we can to change the world of even one person is going to be more than us trying to save the whole world.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, I hope listeners that this episode hadn't been too weird. I hope it didn't sound like we were breaking our arms, patting ourselves on the back or anything like that. I hope you heard it for what we intended it to be. Just, this was a really good experience. And speaking for myself, I learned a lot. I grew a lot. I enjoyed a lot. I got some reminders that I needed. And one of the reasons we wanted to do this podcast was also to kind of extend to you an invitation that this might be something that would be really good for you to do. This might be a good step. Maybe your walk with God has gotten a little stagnant, or you've gotten a little too comfortable. Maybe you feel like you haven't left your comfort zone since the Reagan administration, and it's time just to find out what it's like to be the dumb gringo, or you just need a reset. So Tyler, Bethany, talk to us a little bit about what it might look like, just the nuts of it. And we'll put a link in the show notes to the handout we have into the torch video so you can see a little bit more. But just talk to us a little bit about what next steps are if you're interested.
Yeah, I'll go. I haven't spoken in a while, I feel like. You can, make Bryson do it? Okay. You can, anyone from 12 to 90. We had a 77-year-old that was that with us on this trip, but anyone, any age, pretty much. If you're under 16, you have to have a parent with you, is the rules. But anyone in that age range, just ask me at church, Tyler Quinn, ask Matthew, anyone who really went on the trip, and we can get you information about Torch missions. Go on their website. That's how I found them. I just did a Google search for how I can get involved with mission work and found Torch. Tim Hines is our group leader. If you want to come with us, if you don't want to go with us, you can go find someone else. But we'll, come talk to us. We'll get you signed up. We're looking at going next year, maybe a little later, maybe in July. I don't know. Still got to talk about all that, but going next summer again, of course. If we can get a nice group of 30-ish together, we can maybe get our own date depending on how many other people are joining. But Bethany you said you're going to do a link to
I'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, and that handout has a lot of frequently asked questions. So again, how much does it cost, and who should go, and things that you should know before going. And then at the bottom, there's a QR code. I think Matthew said he put the link to the form as well. But that form just tells us your name, your email, and reminds you to go ahead and get started on your passport. Make sure that it doesn't expire within 6 months of the travel date. But then Marcia, Tim's wife, said that it would be about September, October that we would get dates for the next year. And so once we find that information out, we'll be sending out emails from the list from the forms that you fill out. So if you're interested at all, it doesn't mean that you're going to go for sure, but you're just interested in knowing more, definitely fill out that form, put your email on there so that we've got you on our list.
And don't let the cost be the prohibiting factor. There's always somebody to step up in our church if somebody needs help. So don't feel like if you can't afford to go, don't let that be the reason.
I think that's one of the first times where it's like, if you want to go, put your name down. God will make it happen, and we'll trust God that He's going to get you there.
Anything else you guys want to share? Well, friends, this has been fun. Thanks for doing it. Thanks for taking the time to listen to these random stories of Honduran street clowns and janky school bus rides of death and dismemberment, and our secret prayers that Marshall would get trafficked.
Sorry.
It was a good time. We thought you were cute. So, we'd give it for you and that one for me.
Wow.
It was a great experience, and I'm grateful that you guys got that we got to do this together. Thanks for listening today, and I hope that you will maybe share this with a friend who just needs a little nudge, a little reminder about all the many, many different ways God works in our stories. Until next time, see you then.
Thanks for listening to Rough Drafts. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. While you are at it, help us spread the word by leaving a rating and review. Until next time, let's keep looking for how God writes His love into our stories.